right. I've got 4:05. Unfortunately, you folks are stuck with me as chair. John has an unavoidable conflict. So with that, I'd like to open the Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, April 19th, 2023 to order. First order of business, the minutes from March 15th, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve? And a second. Thank you, Serena. Any comments, questions, suggested changes, corrections? Hearing none, let me try your minds. All in favor, either signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Any abstentions or recusals? One abstention. Thank you. Thanks, Rich. All right, item number 2, Executive Director's Report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go over a couple of items from last month and then some new items. I apologize if I seem a little long-winded, but I'm going to try to make it as fast as possible. I did confirm that the Avelo load factors for New Haven run about the 80% range. And I'd like to thank everyone that sent me the information on historical emplanements. With that in mind, it appears that 2019 had the most emplanements at 50,355. That was until 2022, where we had 351,690 emplaned passengers. And for January alone this year, we saw an increase of 20,000 employments over last January. Felipe, if you'll let me share my screen, I just want to show a couple of charts. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this shows a few of the years in the past from 1999 through 2017. You can see that the average was running, or at the peak, around 3,500 to 4,500 employments per month. 2022, they're running at about, I'm sorry, the monthlies were at about 3,500 to 4,500, and the annuals were running at about 40,000, 35 to 40,000. In 2022, basically what we're seeing is the numbers that we're seeing monthly are what we used to see on an annual basis here. So you can see Avelo is running at around 37,000 employments per month. And if you look back historically on annual employments, this is what it looks like in a graph. So this demonstrates the significant spike in growth here, and it's continuing. So when folks are, asking questions about why certain things weren't anticipated or whatever, you can see, it was tracking along at a pretty easy rate, and then all of a sudden it jumped up. So just wanted to show that. And let me just stop sharing 1 second here. So a couple of other items I wanted to touch on. We did hold the EA public meeting on April 1st. It was well attended with just under 300,000 people. However, since all of the folks that signed up to speak did not have the opportunity to do so, we'll be holding a supplemental hearing via Zoom on April 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. And you can get more information on that at tweedmasterplan.com/meetings. Generally speaking, there are a number of questions that have come up about differences in the master plan versus the EA. And as I just showed you, you can see the spike in traffic. So the master plan folks, when they're doing it, were only working with the information they had at that time, which was when Avelo was still a charter airline. So the draft EA tried to take the updated information that they have at that time, and that's what they're working to address. It should be noted too that during the master plan, there are 2 documents that are approved by FAA, and that's the airport layout plan and a forecast. And the forecast is very rigid on what you're allowed to do and what you can't do. The FAA has a overall national forecast, which is known as the terminal area forecast. And that is what you're held to. And that's basically why you saw in the master plan the estimates they had. If they were to tell the FAA at that time they anticipated or what they may have thought and saw a crystal ball at the Velo, FAA would not have approved that. I apologize. I've got a couple of things going on here. My computer's not working too well either. Got an issue here. Excuse me 1 second. I'm not sure why, but my document just closed that I was going with on here. So there are a few other items I wanted to address, and I apologize. I should have printed this out for a backup, but my document's not responding to me right now. Let me see if I can do this.
Tom, is it just the sharing tool, or can you open a document, find a document and send it to Felipe?
No, I'm not even trying to share it. I'm just trying to read off of a document I had, and it's not responding at all. So I don't know why. I have a list of items I need to go through here. Technical difficulties.
There we go. Take your time.
Appreciate your patience.
Well, if you call the help desk, they'll say, did you try rebooting yet?
That's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, Tom, while you're working on that, Jeremy, do you want to, we'll move ahead on the agenda, and Jeremy, you give your,
I'm back in business, Matt. I'm
oh,
sorry.
you're back in business. Great.
So a couple of the other items. Recently, we had a certification inspection. FAA came in March 29th through the 31st. And I don't want to steal any of Jeremy's thunder, but I will say it went extremely well. They're very complimentary, and the inspection was completed by the lead inspector out of New England region, as well as a Washington inspector. And again, I'll leave it up to Jeremy, but I've dealt with that inspector in the past, and it's not very often you see compliments from them. So congratulations to Jeremy and his team, and I'll let him expand on that when he gets to his report. Another item, Avelo did announce on April 6th, 2 more new cities from New Haven. On June 21st, they'll begin Melbourne service, and on June 22nd, they'll begin Daytona service. Both of those will be twice weekly. I have a presentation I'd like to give, and I'm going to try to be brief. It's a bit long, but it's called Airport 101, just to get the board members as well as the public familiar with airport administration and management and how it works. And Felipe, I don't know if you want me to share my screen, or how do you want to handle that when it's in the packet?
You can share your screen.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can do that now without messing everything up like I did before. Okay, so essentially, airports are part of a national transportation system that include rail, highways, waterways, and it's critical to our economy. But just to give you a sense, it includes over 46 million people throughout the country that we're providing service to. Today, what I'd like to do is go through a few items, the aviation industry and the system, commercial aviation, some airport development and funding, how airport ownership and organizational structures typically work, and some key regulations and requirements, and a quick basic overview of airport finance. The NAS, which is the National Airspace System, is basically the highways in the sky, and it started out in 1946, and they've been improving it ever since. But just to give you a sense of how big and robust it is, every day FAA services more than 45,000 flights, 2.9 million passengers over a 29 million square mile area that is the U.S. airspace. It's a network of both controlled and uncontrolled airports and systems. The early pioneers were actually Pan Am and Juan Trippe. They set out and put a lot of old school navigational instruments out there. So it's been an ongoing and evolving system, and they're now working with such things as drone and unmanned vehicles to create the paths in the sky for them. The National Plan for Integrated Airport System is what supports DOT and FAA in their goals. There's 6 key areas: safety, capacity, environmental performance, runway pavement condition, surface transportation, and airport financial performance. The NIPIAS is updated annually, and it's required under Part 49, U.S. Section 47103. They're required to maintain this so that it's the main internet or national plan for airports, and it identifies the funding needs of the system. And when I say the system, it includes airports, the FAA, and everything that goes along with that. So it identifies the amount and type of airport development that's eligible for federal funding as well. And that's what drives it. So we are part of what's known as the NIPIAS. We have to have a NIPIAS number when we apply for grants and things. And again, it's driven by forecasted traffic. And that's why I say, going back to the national forecast, that's why FAA is so critical when you do your forecast for a master plan. It has to meet certain criteria and has to be based on very hard data. Otherwise, it'll skew the entire system. So that's why, you know, when you see what you see with our growth, they would have thought we were crazy, but we can't just give that to them until it's actually happening. Some classifications on airports. Public use airports, one that is open to the public, and that sounds, you know, pretty basic, but I actually worked at an airport that was federally controlled. It was a federal government airport, open to the public, but was not a public use airport. So there's different classifications. You can also be a privately owned airport, but if you have over 2,500 annual employments, you are considered a public use airport. And again, to be eligible for FAA grants, you must be in that NIPIAS that I mentioned earlier. A commercial service airport is a public airport that has at least 2,500 passenger boardings each year and receives scheduled service. Primary airport is defined by FAA as a commercial service airport with more than 10,000 passengers. So we are a public use commercial service primary airport. A non-hub airport handles over 10,000, but less than 0.05% of the country's annual passenger boardings. Currently, HVN is designated as a non-hub primary airport. However, we're moving up into the small hub because of that growth that I showed you earlier. And that's based on number of employments annually. So here you'll see where we're currently listed as a non-hub. We'll be moving up into the small hubs. And so throughout the country, there's 80 small hubs currently and 238 non-hubs. Just to give you a sense of the airport environment itself, and I don't mean to disparage anybody, this is very brief. They do a lot more than what I'm going to say here, but just to give you a quick sense of who does what. The airlines provide the air transportation from point A to point B, as we all know. It's operated in the United States by private companies. In other countries, the government operates some of the airlines. So it's a mass transportation system that's operated by, not operated by the government, such as rail and some other things in this country. So it's a little different from the rest of the mass transportation providers. Air traffic control directs the traffic in the air and on the ground to ensure safety. They do a lot more than that. There are amazing stories of air traffic controllers talking people out of bad situations and helping them land safely. The airport, our role as an airport is to provide a facility to land and take off for airlines and tenants to operate and ensure a safe and secure environment. We're often confused with airlines, and I'll go into that in a little bit as to why and the history of that. Fixed base operator, or FBO, are the companies that provide fuel and aircraft services to airlines and pilots. So just a little history on commercial aviation. We all know about the Wright brothers in the early 1900s. After World War I, airlines began, and as many of you know, they started by carrying mail. Mail was the money maker, and then they said, hey, look, passengers up top, and that then started the commercial air passenger service. The Air Commerce Act in 1926 that was basically when it all started. They tried organizing it in the government. After World War II, there was a lot of growth in the commercial service. Again, they are now carrying passengers for hire. The first jet aircraft was in 1949. 1957 was a 707. As you may recall, or at least some of us might, flying at that time was very expensive. The CAB was created in 1939 to regulate commercial flights in the United States. They controlled the routes, the destinations, and the fares. They're the predecessor to the NTSB, so they investigated accidents. And they were abolished in 1986 after the Deregulation Act of 1978. After the controls were removed from the CAB, it opened up an opportunity for low fare carriers, which today are known as ULCCs, or ultra low cost carriers. Some of you may remember that in the early 80s, some major carriers attempted to create low fare carriers, and I listed some of them here, but they learned the hard way that a low fare carrier doesn't translate to a low cost carrier and doesn't necessarily mean you make profit. So the ones that were successful established and encouraged competition. That's what the whole idea of Deregulation Act was. But it was difficult for them to get into the market. And as some of you may remember, and the reason I said earlier, the confusion between airline and airport, to this day, there are still terminals that are either operated or owned by airlines, but historically, that was the case in most major airports. It was Pan Am and Kennedy, and years ago, Continental and Newark, and so on. And everybody associated the airline with the airport and thought they were one and the same. With the low fare carriers and deregulation, they worked their way into the major markets, and there were a number of lawsuits that went on regarding predatory pricing, but it changed the whole dynamic of how an airport operates, especially the major ones, and it required them to develop competition plans and allow for the entry of these low fare carriers into these markets that were dominated by the majors at the time. Some of the capital development and funding things that we do here, we use mostly Airport Improvement Program funding, or AIP. It's a broad act, but it covers our funds through a ticket tax. It's based on the base fare. That's another subject we'll get into another day. It was developed as a user fee system. Although it's considered a tax, it's a tax on the users, not on the general population. So it's more of a user fee system. It can be used to fund a percentage of what they deem to be as eligible projects. You can't just pick and choose. You know, they have a list of things, their top priorities are safety, security, capacity. Most projects or priority projects are funded at 90%, and it's broken down into two essential areas. Entitlement, which is a formula based on our enplanements, and with the increase in traffic, we'll see an increase in the entitlement money. Discretionary money is a competitive market where it's a much larger pot where you compete with airports across the country, and you're looking at the higher priority projects of safety and capacity. So some of the highest type projects would be a runway rehabilitation or extension. AIP is funded through what's known as the Airport and Airway Trust Fund. was created in 1970 that funds the entire system, including air traffic, all other FAA operations, all the things that you see out in the system. The trust fund itself was very significant and at times was used to offset some of the federal deficit. It has since, I would say, taken a bit of a dive, and some of that has to do with because the unbundling of some of the fares on some of the carriers, because again, the revenue is generated off the base fare. Another source that we use for capital funding is known as passenger facility charge, or PFC. It allows for up to a maximum of $4.50 per eligible passenger, basically per enplanement. It's capped at $4.50 right now. And unfortunately, it hasn't been increased in more than 20 years, so it hasn't kept pace with inflation. And that's created a bit of a problem. Often the PFCs are used to match the AIP. As I mentioned, AIP is often at 90% for critical projects, and this is used sometimes to get the matching 10% for that. Other programs that have come out in recent years are the CARES Act, the PERSA Act, and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Again, different pots of money. It gets very confusing and difficult for FAA to administer, but they put out what are called NOFOs, or Notice of Funding Opportunities, and you've got to be ready to pounce on those, and we're working to take advantage. I know this airport has worked. They've received CARES and PERSA money, and we're in line for some bill money as well. Some of the ownership options in the U.S. for airports, they can be state-owned or authority, which could be a state, local, or regional. They can be an enterprise fund under a municipality, a municipal government or department rather, and they can be a combination of public and private, such as Tweed New Haven here. We have both. We have a lease and a management agreement there. It can be one or the other or both. And again, just some typical organizational structures. Major departments in airports or administration, operations, and maintenance, with divisions of security, fire, landside, airside, environmental, engineering, planning, finance, legal, goes on and on and on. A major airport is like a small city, and some of them are like big cities. So it's anything you see in a city is basically what they have there. Some of the key primary regulations that we're required to abide by. Part 139 is our Bible, or it's our main document, certification of airports. It identifies how the airport must be operated. And under Part 139, we're required to have what's known as an airport certification manual. That's the Bible for how the airport is operated safely. Part 77 establishes the standards affecting navigational airspace, obstructions and things of that nature. Part 150, as we're all pretty familiar with, is the noise compatibility program and identifies a number of items regarding noise. Some other key regulations and requirements. So many years ago, when the airport was formed and it was determined that they wanted to accept these federal grants from the FAA, like anything else the federal government does, it comes with assurances. So there are a number of grant assurances that we are required to abide by. There's 39 grant assurances, and just to give you an order of magnitude, grant assurance number 1 alone deals with 28 laws, 11 executive orders, and 24 regulations at this time. They continually are expanding too. There's a compliance manual that the FAA puts out, and that's a guidebook that allows us to look and make sure that we're in check with compliance. It gives a lot of examples and what to do and what not to do to ensure that you're within compliance. And there's a method for stakeholders or airlines to file complaints if they think that the airport is not operating something properly. What's known as a Part 13 is an informal complaint process, and a Part 16 would be a formal complaint process. Another big regulation that, and I say we, it's primarily AvPorts here, have to deal with is CFR 49 CFR 1542, or airport security, which requires us to have an airport security program. And that's, again, another very extremely detailed regulation. Some of the key grant assurances, number 22, economic non-discrimination. It basically says we have to make the airport available on a public use basis on reasonable terms without unjust discrimination in all types, kinds, classes of aeronautical activities, including commercial aeronautical activities offering services to the public at the airport. One of the most recent cases on that was in Lantana down in Florida. There was a gentleman who owned a private jet and he wanted to operate late at night. And they said you couldn't, and he filed a complaint under this, and it was determined they were discriminating, so they were not allowed to do that, and he had to be able to operate his aircraft when he wanted to. Grant Assurance 24, a fee and rental structure requires the airport to develop a fee structure that is essentially makes the airport as self-sustaining as possible. Airport revenues are under Grant Assurance 25 and deals with revenue diversion and use of airport revenue. I'll get into that more in just 1 second. However, it also deals with our rates and charges, and under rates and charges at an airport, you have to follow one of 3 approved methodologies: a residual, a compensatory, or a hybrid. Under the residual, the airlines assume full responsibility for the risk, the financial risk of the airside. Under compensatory, the airport assumes that risk, and under the hybrid, it's a combination. At this time, I would say that HVN is most likely, majority of it is compensatory with some residual melding there. So we have an approved methodology. The revenue diversion use of airport, they're very strict on. It goes back to a case years ago in Los Angeles where the airline sued the airport for taking airport revenue and using it, I believe it was for trash removal services in the city at the time. So they went to court and back and forth for a number of years, and there are a number of court orders that dictate how we can use airport revenue, what it can be used for. And the bottom line rule is airport revenue must remain on the airport for the benefit of the airport. Now, there are a handful of airports that are grandfathered in for some crazy reason, but we're not one of them. And again, it has to be used for the airport, the local airport system, or other facilities owned and operated by the sponsor, which is us, the authority, that are directly related to the air transportation of passengers and property. I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was trying to build an access road into the airport, but because it was shared by another entity, the FAA would not allow the funding of that road. They wouldn't allow the revenue generated from the airport to be used for that. So in summary, the owner of this airport is a state authority with a lease from the city of New Haven. We're a primary commercial service, non-hub at this time, soon to be small hub public use airport. We're operated by a private management firm that also has a lease for capital development, which is, I want to say it's unique, but it's also creative. And given the fact that the Transportation Trust Fund has been dwindling, is a very significant benefit. We're regulated by many rules and regulations, primarily federal, and the airport is a major economic engine for the region. So again, I tried to get through that. If anybody wants to have a discussion offline about any of the particular subjects or anything, I'll be glad to have a chat with you. But I just wanted to go through and give you a sense of basically what we have to deal with as an airport. And I'm sure a lot of you probably heard most of that, but I just wanted to make sure it was covered. I also prepared a packet that I sent out to the board members earlier today, and it's essentially it would be for new board members, but I thought it would be worthwhile for you to have it. It's just some basic information about the airport, traffic report, our airport layout plan, basic little things like the address, phone number, that type of stuff. And as a new board member comes on, we'll prepare those for them as they come into the board. A couple of other operational concerns that have come up since our last meeting. Recently, there have been questions raised whether a certain type or model of aircraft is safe to operate at the airport. And I just want to make it clear that this determination is up to the FAA and the aircraft operator. The air carriers have to go through a process to obtain an air carrier operating certificate. and they have to go through US DOT, there's two critical things that they need. One is an economic authority from the Office of the Secretary, which is known as an economic fitness certificate. The other is the safety authority in the form of an air carrier certificate of operations that comes from the FAA. So the air carriers and airlines deal with a division of the FAA known as flight standards. They're the ones that ensure the safety of the airline, that they're operating properly, that they're operating within the limits and so on and so forth of the company. We deal with another division, and that's the one that just recently did the inspections, and that is the airports division under FAA. So our role essentially is to provide the facilities to ensure that the facilities are provided for the airlines and that the runways and pavements and things of that nature are safe. Whether or not it's safe to operate a particular type, model, size, shape, color of airplane, that's up to FAA to make that determination. And the reason is there's so many variables that go into it. It's a highly technical decision. So FAA does that. Another subject that has come up quite a bit recently, and I want to spend a little bit of time on it. I apologize again for running long, but the issue of diversions. So diversions occur for many reasons, whether they're technical, mechanical, medical emergencies, disruptive passengers, safety related, weather. And weather related diversions are not uncommon in the airline industry. In fact, a recent search of FlightAware indicated multiple diversions just this past Monday. Many of them were heading to LaGuardia Airport and others throughout the country. Again, on Monday of this week, Boston Logan, they had put out that their average delay was about 45 minutes due to a low ceiling and weather. These weather impacts have a rippling effect on the entire air traffic system. And just like when you have congestion, it's like a traffic jam. When there's a traffic jam in New York, that affects a lot of other airports throughout the country. The same with Boston or anywhere else. So anything that happens, whether it's weather related or capacity related, when there are challenges throughout the system, it has a rippling effect and backs up things across the entire country. So just a couple of background numbers on diversions, and this comes from the Oregonian dated in December 2022. Across the largest U.S. airlines, around 0.24% of flights were diverted from July of 21 through June of 22. That's around 1 in every 416 scheduled flights. The article continues to identify the carrier with the worst performance during that period, and no, it's not our local favorite airline, as having a diversion rate of 0.43% or 1 in 232 flights. So just to put that in perspective. Now, while they're not desirable for passengers or the airline, they're done mainly for safety reasons in accordance with regulations, and they're done in a very methodical way. Weather-related delays can occur for a variety of reasons, including snow, ice, thunderstorms, or as happened recently in Tweed, New Haven, is fog. Airline aircraft have very sophisticated instruments that pilots use in accordance with FAA procedures to guide them safely to the runway during bad weather. In a situation such as fog, where visibility may be limited, pilots will make a precision instrument approach and descend according to published procedures to a point known as a decision height, at which time, if the runway is not in sight, they can execute a missed approach or go around. The missed approach procedure for runway 2 at New Haven takes the aircraft over what is known as the Madison VOR, which is located in the Guilford area. The crew will continue to communicate and get weather updates from air traffic controllers and make a decision either to make another attempt at landing or divert to an alternate airport. As we all know, weather changes very quickly. And in fact, I've seen it where the weather conditions at one end of a runway can be completely different at the other end of a runway. So it's an ever-changing, ongoing series of events. And the communication between the tower and the flight crew is critical, as well as many other things such as fuel on board and other situations. So I will say this, that yes, we had diversions, and airlines sometimes will divert to bases where they have personnel. If you divert to an airport where you don't have a staff, it is at times difficult because you're at the mercy of another airline or another ground handling crew. I will say though, over the weekend, Avelo diverted up to Bradley a couple of flights, but they dispatched people there and they were handling the customers accordingly. And I'll just summarize it by saying, you all know I used to work in Nantucket, and over there they had bumper stickers that said fog happens. So things happen. They're doing their best to try to handle it. And again, we're not alone in this. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. One other thing I wanted to note too, that we're not alone in, was brought up in the EA meetings, is the issue of flooding. And flooding will be addressed further before the final EA is completed, as well as a number of other items. But if you've seen recently in the news, Fort Lauderdale Airport was shut down for quite a long period of time because of flooding. So we're not the only ones that are alone in this game, whether it be weather, whatever other things that happen. I have one other item before I conclude my report, and I just want to bring it to the chair and the board's attention. There's been some discussion amongst board members about returning to in-person meetings, and I checked and verified that if the board so desires, we can do hybrid meetings as well, which would be a combination of in-person and virtual. So with that, I'll leave, that's the end of that report, and I'll leave it up to you folks if you'd like to discuss whether or not you want to do in-person or hybrid meetings.
Tom, thank you very much for that detailed report. Very informative. I might suggest that we make those two documents that you talked about available to the general public. I think if we had those posted on our website, it would help inform the public as to the appropriate and actually the defined roles of the various participants in the airport airline industry. So I think that would be helpful to put out on our website so folks could take advantage and learn, as some of us have just today on it with those documents. So we appreciate that. I do not have a chairman's report. John forgot to send it to me. Ken, hold on one second. Give me a second.
Yeah.
I would like to take up the question of meeting format under other business before we close. So, because I want to get through Jeremy's report as well, as I want to be respectful of people's time here. Ken, what was it you were looking to talk about?
I just want to raise a couple of issues, and if you give me a few minutes, I'd appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly, please, at this point, Ken, go ahead and share, please.
All right, the first thing I'd like to discuss is the public hearing. I don't know if this is the appropriate agenda item to talk about the public hearing. I sat through the public hearing from 10:30 in the morning to 4:30 till the end. Board member Mr. Genetti sat next to me during almost all of that time. And I have to say, for the record, and this is for the record, I heard compelling testimony from a variety of professionals, public, elected officials, why there should be an EIS. I want to go on record for that. I also want to go on record to say that I've been calling for the EIS since last year when I was a member of the defunct, and I will say defunct, Environmental Committee, which has not met in 1 year. Let me continue. I have extensive experience of dealing with federal agencies over my career at the United States Senate. Matt, you know that.
Yes.
And one of the examples I'd like to give is my dealing with the Department of Defense and Department of Navy. And let me lead into it. It was the closure of the Navy base in Groton, Connecticut. Twice it was up for closure. The public formed a committee to fight that. I was a member of that committee. The public, that committee original fight was economic impact on the region. And when I joined the committee and led and added some of my limited experience, economic impact to the Navy, to the Department of Defense, doesn't matter. What I heard on that public hearing from the testimony of the city of New Haven and the Chamber of Commerce in New Haven, how the economic impact would be beneficial to corporate New Haven. That's not the issue. The issue is public safety, how it affects the community. And that's what the FAA or any government agency that I have had experience dealing with is concerned about. They could care less about economic impact, period. That's been my experience twice with the Navy, and twice we beat them because we made the argument of public safety and the good of the nation and the community. Okay, so I just want to go on record of saying that, and I still, in my heart of hearts, believe there should be an EIS. It's not my decision. I know it's the FAA's, and it's not our decision either. But I want to go on record for that. The other thing I wanted to ask is, how did the second public? I'm glad there's a second hearing, but how did that come about? Was it a request of the FAA? Was it the board's request? Was it the executive director's request? Was it the city of New Haven's request? How did that come about? Because I just learned about it, that it was scheduled on April 25th, and I'm curious of how that occurred. Who requested that? How was that requested?
Ken, thank you. That's a good question. I raised the same question to Tom and Andrew King, but I'm going to let Tom respond to that.
Yes, thank you. It was a decision of the team, collectively, the consultant ourselves, FAA, a number of folks. And it was based on the fact that approximately, I think it was 39 people that had signed up did not have the opportunity to speak because of time constraints that we were under.
Fair
So
enough.
the team agreed that, we should do something, and because of the time frame that we have, we went with virtual, and that's what we're doing.
And will it be the same two people from the FAA will be sitting in on those meetings? Because
Yes.
honestly speaking, I watched their body language and their attention to those people speaking. It was weak at best, to be honest with you. The gentleman was playing with his phone most of the time, looking down. I can't speak for the woman, about the woman, but I will tell you that I was a little disappointed that their attention span was fair. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But it wasn't, I don't think they were tuned in, to be honest with you, but so be it. That's my point on the public hearing. The second thing I want to ask you about, and you discussed it a bit, was the diversions and the aborted landings over the past several days or last weekend or whatever, when we had fog, and I understand that. Were most of those aborted landings or diversions 800s? Do you know? I can't hear you, Tom.
I don't believe so, because again, the 800s are not as frequently used as the 700s. I
Yeah.
really don't know the answer, but I would
I
assume
think
it's
several
probably-
were, to be honest with you, at least a handful. And I'm just citing a February 2021 memo from Avello to Tweed saying that they would be reluctant or probably not fly in 800s until the runway is extended. But obviously, they don't pay attention to their own memo. And if you like a copy of it, I'm happy to send it to you. But that's their words, not ours, not yours, not the previous executive director. It was said to Sean Scanlon as the executive director, but they basically said they are not going to fly, or they're not planning on flying 800s into Tweed until the runway is extended. To my knowledge, the runway is not extended. So why is that being allowed?
Um,
You know you can't answer that
Can you
because
address
it's new to you, but I'd like an answer to that.
Okay, well, I believe your interpretation of that letter is not the same as my interpretation.
Okay, you're the
The
expert.
language says that they fully intend to use the 800 when the runway is extended. And subsequent to that letter, I believe, they also acquired short field performance 800s, which allow them to operate off of it. I've read that letter several times, and I
Okay.
can't see anywhere in there where it says that they will not use the 800 on the existing runway.
But the first memo did.
If you have
I'll
another
get you a
memo, I'd
copy.
like to see that.
I'll
Okay.
get your copy. Okay, that's all I have to say. I appreciate the time.
Can I say something?
And yeah, wait, yeah, thank you. Yeah, since we just opened up this to not only questions of Tom, but offering opinions, I feel it's only fair to offer the same opportunity to other board members who wish to comment in similar fashion. Rich had his hand up first, and then we'll go to David.
Thanks, Matt. So McKenna, I can't speak to the comments and whether comments from the business community, whether the comments from the business community spoke to the core issues. that are at hand with the draft environmental assessment, but I would say that the environmental assessment itself did speak to the issues that are germane to the FAA's decision about whether to proceed to an environmental impact statement.
All right, thanks, Rich. David?
Yeah, I just want to say briefly, I've been on the 800s, and I think it's a good problem we have. They're filled. The ones to Fort Lauderdale, there's 189 people going up, coming down, 2 of them a day, and that's about 700 people. And I think it's great they're using the 800s. There's basically no difference, except the fact that there's more people on the planes.
It's a safety, could be a safety issue.
Clearly, if the FAA allows them to tweet, it's not a safety issue.
I think some of us may be over our skis, evaluating the safety issues. And that should be left to some experts, but clearly you're welcome to make the statements, but I'm not sure that there's anybody on this board who is qualified to assess the safety.
Agreed.
Asking the question is fair, Ken.
All right, you got it.
Ray, you're up next.
Hi, Tom, thanks for that lengthy report. 2 things off of what you said that I wanted to ask some questions on. Obviously, the change in the algebraic equation with the number of emplacements and what the EA was originally based off of and what is actually taking place now. Obviously, there's some changes going on. Would you be able to elaborate on what those changes are that, with the different number of emplacements and what the EA is doing because of that?
Okay. And if I can, Mr. Chair, sorry, through you.
Yes.
So the EA has taken the more updated data that was current at the time they were doing it, and it's much more current. It doesn't, it has the spike and so on. And they have applied it to the noise contours. They're also working with FAA to get an updated forecast that will be hopefully approved by FAA, and that will, all of that folds into the funding as well. But they took into account under the EA, which is an extension of the master plan, the new numbers. The master plan, like I said, only had information from when Avelo was extra. So the EA, as a more updated document, took the information up through, I believe it was about halfway through 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And they have applied it to all of the items that they had to look at.
Good. When do you think we can expect to see that back?
To see
With the new numbers and what they're doing now off of, their new evaluation off of the new numbers,
that's what was in the draft EA.
off the old number.
That information is in there. Yeah, the noise contours and things will
Yeah.
run with that.
Okay. All right. And then the last question is, you went from being a non-hub to a small hub. And obviously you explained very well based on the number of emplacements. What else does that change other than the designation of being a small hub? Is there any other parameters that come along with that the airport is allowed to do thing or may be eligible for extra funds or things like that with the change in that designation?
That's exactly it. It's primarily just the funding capabilities. You get into another level of funding, if you will. I think this is a higher number per in-plane passenger or something in the calculation. So it really only has to do with the funding mechanism.
Got it. Thanks, Tom. I yield.
Thank you, Ray. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Ken,
Matt,
yeah.
just one more thing.
Sure.
Tom, why the diversion to Wilmington, which is, a 3+ hour drive for people as opposed to something closer for Bradley and inconveniencing people
Right.
all the way down to Delaware?
I can't speak specifically for the airline, but I can tell you this, Ken, that in my past, many airlines will make a decision to go to where they have staff available
said that
because
earlier.
they have better control and communication with the customers, as opposed to just dropping into an airport where there's no one there. I will say Avelo did dispatch people to Bradley over the weekend. I know that. But again, when you send your staff to a remote airport where you're not a tenant, sometimes you're not a welcome player, and you get to the back of the line. So
Anything to do with gate fees?
I don't believe so.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Ken. Anyone else? All right, Mark, yes.
Yeah, I was also at the public hearing. I'm not an expert, obviously, in environmental law. And I got a slightly different feeling than Ken apparently did, because I thought the deliveries by the representatives of the city of New Haven, for example, Mike Piscatelli, and I thought Matt were excellent. I thought that, frankly, in view of the attitude there, that the people from FAA were pretty sanguine, and I think they tried very, very hard in an arduous way to be fair and reasonable. So I just didn't come away at all with the same sentiment that Ken did. It's a very difficult situation. It's argumentative. It's contentious. Have people who are opposed to something, some rational, some irrational, but nevertheless, it all has to be dealt with and try and keep a level playing field. And I think that was done pretty well. And people can disagree, but that doesn't mean they have to be abusive or be antagonistic towards the people that we're presenting. And I thought I saw a lot of that, which is unfortunate, because I think it takes away from the credibility and the validity even of the opposition.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Robert?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, I'm not sure if it's for Tom or Jeremy when it comes to operations, but the diversions that were noted are nothing new, and as Tom has described, tends to happen. I guess I'm more concerned about how would we improve the reaction and response to the diversion. The questions that really are coming up is not that it happened, but how Avelo or Avport, whoever is responsible for it, responded. And that's where we're getting the poor grade, or at least the poor feedback from the customers. So I'm not sure, again, if this is something for you, Tom, as the ED, or something that Jeremy can address when he discusses and presents his operation report.
I can speak to it, and if Jeremy wants to expand, that's fine. It is the airline's responsibility, and Avelo is improving dramatically. I've seen, just in the short time I've been here, some significant improvements, and a lot of it has to deal with communications and getting the message to the customers, as well as providing alternatives and what the benefits may be, or whatever they're willing to do for the customer. I will say too, though, that Avports, I have seen them jump in. They work shoulder to shoulder with the airline. They have provided pizzas to people on the ground here that are delayed and so forth. So although it's not their responsibility, it is the airlines. Avports has done a very good job working closely with them. And I know they meet on a regular basis with the Avelo folks to work to improve a plan for such issues as diversions.
Well, Tom, thanks for the response. And I guess there's a disconnect between what the actual actions are versus what the delayed or rerouted passengers are feeling and getting. So you're right, it's communication, but it also seems to appear that something else needs to be done, or a more deeper dive and analysis of what can be done to improve their response.
But that's where I'll leave it up to Jeremy. I know that Avports meets with them and has been discussing a number of things to formulate or improve the plan.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait to hear from Jeremy.
Just a quick editorial comment here. In a capitalistic society, the market determines who wins and who loses. And you can rest assured that Avelo is keenly aware of the customer relations challenges they have whenever these events happen. So, but again, we'll let Jeremy talk to that. But I do know that Avello has, is concerned about these because it impacts their reputation and eventually their business model. Anyone else? Hearing none. Jeremy. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Finance Committee report first. Serena, are you presenting or is
I
Brett presenting?
am, I really quickly, because I have to jump off, Matt. I apologize, but
Fine.
I have, each of you have received your financial reports in your board packets, and I've asked Tom to do just a really quick presentation of what you have received for any questions or review. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Sabrina. So in your pack, you have the financials. You'll see in the airfield, February expenses were about $209,203. Airfield revenues of $32,500. So the net reimbursement that the lessee had to put up was $176,629 for the month of February. I think that, yeah, that's a report for February. You may recall the previous was up around 180-some thousand. Administratively, the legal costs continue to, I don't want to say grow, but they're continuing to work with a lot of FOIA requests. The revenues were $51,729 over expenses of $44,488. So an overall positive net income, although small, of $7,240. And the balance sheet, we continue to work on some transitional items. The receivables are mostly from the airfield subsidy. And I just wanted to point out that we only pay Avports once we get the check from the lessee. And the overall fund balance is up slightly to about $86,053. One other note on the audit, we're currently soliciting proposals for audit services. The RFP can be found on our website at Fly Tweed under the heading of about airport and then doing business with the airport. And proposals will be accepted through May 8th at 5 p.m. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions on the financial report? Hearing none. We'll go to Jeremy. Jeremy, on airfield operations first, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, my voice is a little raspy, so I'll try to make sure that you can hear me. Let me just first, I'll just maybe start to address some of the questions that I heard. We don't want to speak on behalf of Avello, but I can say from our perspective, and I think we are kind of in the same position as Avello, we're experiencing, very rapid growth, unlike any other airport has probably experienced, to my knowledge. And so, we're all feeling some of those growing pains. As the executive director suggested, we're working shoulder to shoulder with Avello. During these last, couple weekends when we've had these events, our entire team is boots on the ground. Everyone's, in the terminal. We're working directly with the customer. We hear the feedback. We have the people arriving. They've been diverted. They grab a rental car. They come to Tweed, and we hear their stories, and we're empathetic with them. But there's also realities to the industry where it doesn't matter if it's a startup airline or an airline that's been in business for decades. These events are never easy, and there's never a one size fits all answer. Just the reality is there's just not a lot of things you can do in these circumstances necessarily that's gonna make everyone satisfied, but we do our best. The pizza was a good example. We try to give water out to people. We're trying to make conversation and be there to answer questions and take some of that stress away the best we can. But I will say for Avello, they have hired a director here based at Tweed, who's a corporate level representative who is leading their effort to make Tweed a center of excellence for their operation. And we're partnering with them in that because we want to be part of that solution. We're learning as we go, and we're always constantly striving to make improvements. We're committed to that, and we do hear the frustrations. As the airport operator, some of those, or a lot of it, is out of our hands, but we are working collaboratively with Avelo in the terminal, which is, when there's diversions or there's cancellations, it's, how do you manage the volume of people that are either waiting for a flight to go out, or just it's definitely it's a challenge, but we're up for that challenge, and we'll continue to listen to the feedback and adjust as we go. So that's, if there's other questions, I can try to answer those, but that's just in a nutshell, maybe a response that I think is appropriate for some of those questions. I will note, yesterday we hosted a group of students from Hill House High School in New Haven. I was part of a partnership that we have with the Connecticut Yankee Council, which is a local chapter for the Boy Scouts of America. And this is the second time we've done this with this organization, and we're looking to do this into the future. We had several students here, sharp folks, also some homeschool students that were here with their families as well, as far away from Toland, Connecticut. So people are jumping on this opportunity to gain an inside track on what a potential career would be in the field of aviation. So Avelo rolling out the red carpet for these folks, as well as our staff, giving them direct access to people that are in the industry, the equipment, the aircraft, and just the opportunity to answer questions. So we're really seeking to be mentors to these kids as best we can. It's the introduction, and then we are committed to continuing to build those relationships with this organization. And this is the future generation of people of employees in aviation. And so we really see the value of cultivating these relationships and doing the best we can to invest in these kids. So we're excited for that. We'll continue to provide you updates, but it's been very well received, the feedback, and we'll continue to do that with our partners here at Tweed, with Avelo. TSA's helped, and it's been a good experience. As you heard, we did have our FAA inspection on March 29th through the 31st, very rigorous inspection. I agree, it did turn out, we got good feedback. They recognize the level of competence of our employees. And, we have a few housekeeping items that we've addressed. At the end of the day, they are, minor things that we just, some touch-ups. We've worked with, I want to say thank you to, Robinson Aviation and Avelo and our other partners for their participation. They all have a role to play in these inspections, and, they're under the microscope just as much as we are. But at the end of the day, we're responsible for, the entire outcome. As we represent the authority who holds the operating certificate. So again, we're very pleased with results. We met all the requirements for Index C, all the trial timed responses in our RF apparatus, all of our personnel check out. The field is in great shape. And so we are pleased with those outcomes, and we're effective, I think it was the 17th. Excuse me. We are Index C for during air carrier operations. So we'll continue to make improvements as we continue to train up our staff and meet all the. We're meeting all the requirements now, but we are going to be bringing on more new employees. That's going to require some additional time getting those folks to trained up, and we're we're excited to grow and bring new people into the Tweed family here. So a few other items, Avis budget. I mentioned we had put out a solicitation. We entered into our agreement on April 1st with Avis budget, so that's effective currently. So they are our prime car rental concession here at the airport. We've made some good improvements with accessibility for the customer and some just better level of service. And we, there's a lot, you'll see a lot more changes here in the coming weeks and months. And so there's some exciting things there. We continue to have conversations with Uber as, even as of today, we had some email traffic back and forth. We have an offer on the table, so we're hoping to work with them, in good faith to come to an agreement sometime in May. So that's a focus, continues to be a focus. Parking, we are looking to roll out a parking reservation system. As you know, the traffic is a challenge with our rapid growth, and we have right now a little bit of a hybrid approach with on-site parking, off-site parking in the city. We have people taking public transportation, TNCs, and then obviously the private transportation in and out. So, but the parking reservation will give the customer a little bit more predictability and just help them planning and maybe hopefully take some of that the unknowns out of the travel experience. We try to do aggressive communications to the customer through Avelo, giving them timely knowledge of the parking situation. We have live parking on the website so they can see at any given time how many spaces are available. But we really want to continue to improve as any way we can. So the parking reservation system, we feel, will help give a sense of again, predictability. And so we're hoping to have that in place in early May before we get into full swing here in the summer. We noted previously, there's oftentimes, when we have these delays, it does result in operations that are after hours. So one tool we've implemented that is ready as of today. If you go to our website, flytweed.com, go to About Airport, and then go to Contact. Under the airport administration, you'll see a link for receive after hours operation notification. So if you click that link, you can sign up for these notifications when there's going to be these after hour operations. And so you have a better understanding of the reason for it, where the flight's coming from, and just better communication with the public, the authority, the board, and all of our tenants, and just a tool to use. So we're hoping that will address some of the requests that have been made. And similar to that, the community concern and complaint form, again, always trying to be better. We are working to reformat that tool on our website as well, reformat it so that it's a little bit more specialized in the topics. So the information, when we receive the information, it automatically goes to the responsible party and takes out some of the delays and the time that it takes to either get the information or respond. We're trying to do a better job at being responsive, to those that come in. But it'll be a little bit more comprehensive in what the offerings are. It'll include baggage claim, lost and found, ability to issue or to report a safety concern, issues of noise, and so on and so forth. So it'll be all consolidated into this one form that, again, exists today, but a little bit more better working workflow to it. So we hope by next month that'll be ready to unveil to the general public for use. And I believe two more items. several months ago, we had stated that there would be a website for folks to interact and ask specific questions. So if you go to thenewhvn.com and go under on the far right hand side, there's a link to Town Hall Q&A. If you click on that link, that brings you to a list of popular questions with some standardized answers. So that can give you a baseline for, common questions that are asked, but then there's also a link to ask a question. So you can submit your question right at the top there, click to ask a question. And then there's also sign up. So if you go at the top menu, click sign up, and you can put in your name, email, and you'll receive regular emails from the new HVN regarding things like, the noise, the sound, residential noise program. A lot of questions about how do I participate in that? How can I get benefits from that? So this would be what I would recommend people go and sign up and get all the latest information there. And then finally, I would just like to announce we're going to be having an airport cleanup day. Again, trying to build partnerships with our tenants here and just build more community. We'll be having on the morning of May 2nd, an airport cleanup day. And we like to open that up to anyone in the community that would like to participate. So if you would like to participate, send an email to hvnadministration@avports.com, and we will send you an invite for a meeting on April 26th at 5 p.m., which will be kind of our planning meeting for that event. And we'll have more details at that time. So we're looking forward to that. And that is the conclusion of my report, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jeremy. Anyone have any questions for Jeremy or comments? Rich?
Jeremy, you said the sign up link for the newhaven.com will be on the front page of the website. Did I hear that right?
That's the newhvn.com. So there's two websites. One is flytweed.com. So that's everything. Think of that as the authority's website. We still maintain that site. But then under the new HVN is the town hall Q&A, and then the option for folks to ask the question. So that's the newhvn.com. Top of the page to the right, there's a link for town hall Q&A. If you click on that, there's a list of frequently asked questions, and there's also the option to ask a question. Now, just to clarify, under the flytweed.com, the two, and I can see maybe hopefully there's not confusion, but there's a community concern form. So that's more for not necessarily asking a question, but it's more to report, a lost item, baggage claim, a complaint, reporting a safety issue. And then there's the after hours operation notification, where someone will get a personalized email anytime there's going to be an operation after normal hours.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Jeremy, just one quick note. I'm glad to hear that you think we're making progress with Uber, because it's my understanding that continues to be an issue for some of the folks in the neighborhood where Uber is actually operating, but they're picking folks up off airport. So the sooner that solution can be remedied, I think the better it's going to be for the surrounding neighbors. So good luck with that. Anybody else with anything for Jeremy? All right, hearing none. Moving on to reports and action items. We have no resolutions or anything this evening. Other business. First item up that I'd like to introduce is what Tom mentioned during his report, and that is a return to either in-person or hybrid meetings. My personal preferences, I'd be in favor of hybrid meetings. we have adopted the hybrid model, almost not exclusively. There are some meetings based on lack of availability of equipment where we can't do that in the municipality. But we are seeing that that has given us the opportunity to get together and talk. And, you know, there are so often informal exchanges that take place between members that are not afforded to us with a straight Zoom call if those members want to be in person. Additionally, it gives members of the community an opportunity to interact with us in that fashion as well. So my personal feeling, and again, I don't want to overshadow this, would be consideration of a hybrid. And with that, I would just ask Tom or Jeremy what they think the capacity of our traditional board meeting room is and would allow for. Because I think, you know, if we were to have I'm looking at the screen, it says there are 36 total participants here. I'm not sure that I'll be able to fit in our conference room. So that might require us to do some kind of sign up for in person beyond beyond the board members. So Ken.
And plus it's not ADA compatible.
Right.
You gotta be half mountain goat to climb those stairs.
You're right. Unfortunately.
The stairs are not my friend.
And I think that's why Zoom is helpful, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm in favor of in person, but it's not ADA compatible. So you got to figure out another meeting space. So you're going to get cited for not being friendly to disabled and people who want to attend who are unable to climb stairs.
Right. I think, and again, we could certainly talk to Hugh about the ADA, but as long as we offer an opportunity for folks to participate in the hybrid fashion, that's sort of been the ruling that we've been operating under here.
Okay.
That it gives folks the opportunity to participate. So and I think the term, the art form of the term is you have to make accommodations for disabilities, and Zoom meeting participation I think it qualifies, but we could certainly ask Hugh's opinion on that. And Tom, I'd ask you to take that back to Hugh, please. Anybody else?
I'm in favor of a hybrid model on that. I did have a conversation with Tom earlier today as well. And once we go ahead and get clarification from legal counsel on how we would go about and make a motion to do that, then I think we should entertain it.
Okay. Anyone else? So Joe, did I hear a motion that provided we receive clearance from council relative to the ADA, that we will go to a hybrid model for our next meeting? Is that a motion?
I would make it as a motion, provided we get a legal opinion on it.
Great.
In the space, in the current space that we have available to have face-to-face and hybrid as well.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Robert. Any further comments or discussion? I saw Jeremy put in, I think it was in the chat, but just disappeared on me. 18 people maybe at most in the room. Are you talking board members around the table and then chairs around the perimeter? Jeremy?
Yeah, from a fire code standpoint and just comfort level, I think 15, 18 people tops. It gets a little uncomfortable beyond that.
All right. Well, if we were to have a wildly successful meeting, we have 15 board members, so that does not give a lot of room for the public. But quite honestly, I don't in the number of years that I've been doing this, I don't think I've ever seen every member at a meeting in person when we're doing just in person. So I think it would be incumbent upon Tom and Jeremy to work out some kind of system where folks would notify us that they were going to attend in person, particularly board members first, and then we'd open up slots available to the general public. So, all right. Any further comments? Let me try your mind on the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Raise your hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or recusals? That motion carries. Thank you. Anyone else have anything under other business? Okay, thank you. Let's move on to public comment. Felipe, you're starting to drive now, so let's let some folks in if they're willing, if they're looking to comment.
Sure, I don't see anybody yet, but so let's give it, I guess, some time.
Okay, Lorena, good evening, or afternoon, rather.
Hi, good afternoon. Lorena Venegas from East Haven. My comment today, I wanted to start off with April 1st public hearing. McFarland Johnson did not have a wetland specialist nor a structural engineer to review any of those posters that contain very limited information. That was astounding because when you look at the artist rendering, it doesn't even show the 4-floor parking garage that you're planning to build on wetlands, which is ridiculous in itself. So I want to make sure that you know that at the April 1st meeting, there were items of omission that are very easy to do that were omitted. The environmental justice representative that was there didn't even know the population affected and totally missed out on the flight paths, including Fairhaven, which is astounding since most of the planes, you know, when they use the runway on the northbound side, are going down Fairhaven. I wanted to let you know that also in the draft EA, it doesn't make any mention of the long-eared bat. That's a displaced and endangered bird here in Connecticut, recognized by the Connecticut EPA. What else? Talking about the 737-800, your conversation missed out on the obvious, which is that a waiver was solicited for you to use the 800 model. So what that means is you're using an exception to the rule. So the rules come from a variety of factors, including the runway conditions, but primarily one of the basic factors is the Boeing manufacturer specifications for the use of that plane. And that is 6,000 feet and dry conditions, 7,000 in wet conditions. Everything's already out there. As an airport, Tweed doesn't have any policies on landing requirements for footage, but other airports do, and other states do too, like Rhode Island. They do use that in other states, and you can go to the FAA and get all that yourself. David made a comment that all those planes are going packed with 189 seats. No way. Last month, you left 15 families stranded on the tarmac of Tweed New Haven Airport. They were about to board. They bought their tickets, went through the TSA checkpoint, and they were left stranded. They couldn't get a flight. They were either rerouted to another city with a rental car in Florida trying to figure out their way.
30 seconds
That's
left.
unacceptable business practice. And one more thing that I wanted to say is that in the EA, you say that now this project went up to $165 million. That's a 65% increase from 2 years ago with no explanation. How many of you are getting a 65% raise this year? It is absolutely unconscionable that you have not done a breakdown for the public on where this money is coming from. Because FAA is not going to pay for that parking lot, and they're not going to pay for that garage either. Fog is a constant here.
Lorena, you've exceeded the 3 minutes. Thank you for your comments.
All right, thank you.
All right, who's up next? Michael?
Hi, Michael Giordano in 800 Uno Lago Drive in Juno Beach, Florida. And quickly, I wanted to say thank you to our aviation experts, Tom and Jeremy, for their presentations today. Tom, your presentation was absolutely amazing. I wish you were my fellow instructor in Oklahoma City at the Air Traffic Control Academy when I taught there a few years ago. We would have made a great team. And Jeremy, regarding your comments regarding the putting on the website updated information about non-normal hour operations. I mean, again, I feel like Tweed is going above and beyond in helping and providing information to the community, even though they're constantly made fun of for not doing that. So I applaud you guys, including having the second public hearing. That's just amazing. It's not required, and it's something you're doing on behalf of the community, and I appreciate it. Separately, I find it ironic that the small minority of anti-tweet folks seem to get so upset and concerned about the missed approaches and the diversions. I mean, common sense would tell you, unless you had a direct effect from an incoming passenger or something, why would you care where they divert to and who they're paying taxes to and all that stuff? That's none of your business. If you're against the airport, you should be happy actually they didn't land, right? If you're concerned about the noise. So I just don't understand why that's a big issue. This happens all over the country, all over the world, all the time, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting. And it's just unfortunate that Avella being new and highly publicized in New Haven, that is catching all the attention, including the news stations, which is ridiculous. They need to find something better to do with their time on the air than to report about Tweed's daily operations. Regarding the noise studies that we talk about all the time, some of them were presented over a decade ago at the meetings I'd go to right there at the administration building. And it was shown how the FAA comes up with their contours and the noise studies and different programs. That's what we go by. We don't go by neighbors out there with their iPhones and their iPads taking decibel readings to see if Tweed's in compliance. That's just laughable. You got to stop doing that, people. The FAA takes care of all that. If you just went through the meetings back years ago, you'd know that and understand that. Speaking real quickly about these meetings that I attended for many years, a decade to 15 years ago, there was always a hope for better service out of Tweed. So the people that moved in the last couple of years or the last 10 years and constantly say, this wasn't what was promised to us. Well, if you attended the meetings or were paying attention, it certainly was. We've been trying to get this kind of service, although all of us are surprised at how successful it's gone so quickly. Thank you, Tweed. Keep doing the things you're doing.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Lynn?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. So my name is Lynn Barnett. I'm the New Haven representative on the Project Advisory Committee. And the community members have asked us to send a letter to you. And Dana Walker, who's the East Haven representative on the Project Advisory Committee, and I met over the weekend and drafted a letter and sent it to Tom Rafter via email, as well as to Andrew King, Jeff Wood, and the two FAA representatives that as part of the CC. So my question is, did you distribute that letter to the board members, Tom? And are they aware of it? Is there any way that you can respond to it by the April 25 supplemental hearing so people will know if they have increased opportunity to participate? So that's my comment. It was sent an email. There's a PDF attachment, and also I think the email had the actual letter in the text of the email. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm sure Tom will be addressing it in due course. Anyone else? Tony?
Hi there. Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me. Tony Laurenti, 23 Briar Lane, Meriden, directly under the GPS runway 20 flight path and the route structure between Bradley and New Haven, where VeloJets frequently fly over as a result of diversions. Number one, to the caller who referenced the long-eared bat not being referenced in the EA, I referenced section 5.2.11. It says long-eared bat. I will not quote it. It is in the EA 5.2.11, reference in the EA, the long-eared bat. Representative or Ken, reference your questions about the diversions and the 800 jet. The minimums, the landing minimums for visibility on the ILS runway 2 across all categories of aircraft, A, B, C, D, approach categories, same visibility, the diversions were not. I repeat, not because of an 800 issue. It's visibility that is required. The concern that you have is landing distance. That is a calculation done separately and would pertain to actual landing distances, required landing distances as a result of the contaminated runway. They did not divert for landing distance. Of course, I wasn't there, but this is my livelihood. They diverted because they did not have the required visibility at the decision altitude on the ILS. This is not an 800 issue versus a 700. That was not the matter. To reference Tom's report on diversions, I reference the Department of Transportation, Bureau of Transportation Statistics, which catalog diversions from as far back as 1988 to 2021. Most recently, 2021, there were 14,117 diversions by major US airlines. Holding patterns, diversions, and missed approaches, while a specific technique important to pilots and air traffic controllers, are a routine matter. As Tom again referenced, Boston Logan was holding that day half to a dozen aircraft in one given time in the holding pattern. Obviously, Boston Logan is a different airport with different capabilities. And the good gentleman who talked about body language and his disrespect while I'm speaking directly to him,
30
but
seconds,
for a
please.
matter of public record, aircraft and flight crews divert for weather reasons, and they are required to check the weather forecast and current conditions at their alternate airports. So it is a primary matter of weather at the diversion airport, not other matters other than getting fuel, of course, which is the whole purpose of diverting. So it is alternate weather requirements, and I cannot even speak to the issue of landing
That's
and
right.
takeoff performance. I'll do so at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Anyone else? Joe Giordano.
Hi, good afternoon, folks. So a few things. The first is I'd like to,
Name and address for the record, please, Joe.
sure, I live in East Haven. Joe Giordano, East Haven. I live about 1.25 miles as the crow flies from Tweed. First, Tom, what a great presentation. I learned an awful lot. I'm an aviation person, but I learned an awful lot from that presentation, and I hope everyone on this call learned a lot as well. So thank you again. Number two, I attended the EA hearing on April 1st. I was unfortunately not one of the people who could speak. Here's my observation of what happened at that meeting. Many people went beyond the 3-minute allotted time period, and several of them were quite rude, actually, and several of them were East Haven officials. Also at that meeting, the heckling and the yelling in the audience at the pro-Tweed people was just amazing. I just couldn't believe how rude people were at that meeting. So, and also as far as the FAA people in the front, I didn't see them looking down, although I see some people on this call looking down as I'm speaking, and I'm looking at you in the monitor. So I think there was a totally different perception there, and I'll leave it at that. Third and last thing, I'll be contacting the Town of East Haven Public Works and the Mayor's Office tomorrow. There's a house on the corner of High Street and Kimberly Avenue that I'm pretty sure it's the property owner, it's pretty obvious, has put graffiti on a cement Jersey barrier wall that's clearly either town or state property. It's actually a safety issue. If we want to talk about safety, we'll talk about safety on the ground. And it's graffiti, it's borderline blight, and it should be removed. And the reason why I bring it up is because it's a lot of gibberish about Tweed. And I'll leave it at that. Have a good night, folks.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else? Lori.
Hi, thank you for taking my call, Matt. It's Lori Foster. How is everyone this evening?
Great, Lori. Thank you.
Good. Listen, I apologize for the delay. I had an ISO.
Lori, name and address
Yep.
for the record, please.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Name and address, Lori Foster, 24 Uriah Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Do you need my zip? Thank you, Matt. East Haven, New Haven, it's all 512. I apologize because I did have an ISO decibel meter placed in my garden so I could get some actual recordings and readings. So I'm super excited. Secondly, was that Joe Giordano just talking? I just heard the first name. Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, can you repeat that question?
Who was the speaker that was speaking just before me? All I caught, because I came on late, was his first name, Joe.
It's Giordano.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Joe, if you're listening, yes, there were people heckling in the audience, but you know what? I stopped it. And I stood up in front of everyone and told them to knock it off. And you could tell, and you can confirm that with Andrew King, because we were not going to have that meeting stopped. Yes, there's a lot of very, very frustrated people, but please understand it. And I also had 3 minutes that I was able to speak. And out of respect for the speakers behind me and for the panel, I did stop at 3 minutes, even though I was not able to continue what I wanted to say, which ultimately is we need to come to an amicable relationship. The neighbors and Tweed and Avello. And how do we do that? As for somebody looking down, I actually have a picture of Richard Doucette. He did look like he was sleeping. I did take a picture, so if anybody on this panel would like to see it, I'd be more than happy to share it with you. But Mr. Doucette, I think, may have been looking at a message on his phone, and therefore that's why his head was down, and did look up. So I just wanted to confirm that. I'm sorry I missed the rest of the agenda, but I just wanted to piggyback off of Joe's statements, you know. And I do want to say, there are several pages out there. People are nasty, and Joe is one of them. And I'm not here to rip people apart, but again, we all need to come to an amicable
30
relationship.
seconds left.
Again, and I can go on, but that's what I have to offer to tonight's meeting. And I thank you very much for letting me join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else? You see anything, Felipe?
Not at this moment.
All right, well, as our chairman, John would say, going once, going twice, 3 times is closed. With no other business to attend to, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there is there a motion? And a second. Let me try your minds. All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye. Have a good night, everyone.
to Matt.
Good night.